So welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee being held on Tuesday the 24th of March 2026. For those present in the room, if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest exit and make your way to the fire assembly point in the car park. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public reviewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and is making a recording. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If there are any members of the public present who do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please raise your hand now so that any such person filming or photographing may be aware. Thank you. For participants in the room, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to contribute. When invited to speak, press the button on the right of the microphone unit and speak directly towards the microphone. Please remember to turn your microphone off once you have finished speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones, laptops and other devices are turned to silent. For participants in attendance remotely, can I request that you use the raise hand feature within the system, and if you wish to contribute, to introduce yourself when called upon. Please note that only committee members present in the meeting room may vote. First item is apologies for absence. Have any apologies been notified to the clerk?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hambling of the committee, also Councillor Stoddard, the cabinet members, has sent his apologies.
Thank you. Name substitutes. Do we have any substitutes?
We have Councillor Dave Davis for Councillor Peter Hambling.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, for attending this meeting. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Do members have any interest to declare in the items on the agenda? I see none. Thank you. Item 4, minutes of the meeting. The minutes of the meeting held on 27th of January are included in the agenda for approval. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. And are you content that I sign the minutes as an accurate record? If I could have a show of hands, please. Thank you very much. Questions from members of the public. There are no questions received from members of the public. Questions from councillors. Again, no questions have been received. So we'll move straight on then, I think, to item number 7, which is the Constitution update. As a committee, we have a responsibility to review the Constitution from time to time. There are a number of amendments which have been suggested, which Sean O'Connor, the Deputy Monitoring Officer, has been labouring hard to get to a particular state where we can hopefully get consensus. Sean, I think you have a paper which is on the public website. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Constitution updates, changing the Constitution. Really the gift that keeps on giving, really, isn't it? I've worked for a few authorities, and it sounds very simple in principle, but the nitty-gritty is where the casualties start. So you have a paper in front of you on page 19 of your pack. That includes a proposed draft report to Council on page 23, and with the detail in the 10 appendices to the reports. As you said, Chair, the terms of reference to this committee involves undertaking and updating the Constitution, and then to make recommendations to full Council. The practice and the principle being that the more debate that we have before it goes to full Council, the more analysis, the more kind of views, more input, that we can identify any issues and hopefully address them before it goes to a full Council meeting. The last time this paper went, it did go through without debate, and it was not nodded through. So that's why when we talk about it, it has involved a lot of work and a lot of consultations, a lot of time. That's why we try to do that. We have consulted with officers, group leaders on 2 occasions, consulted with groups and external organisations where necessary. A meeting of this committee was convened to look at some of the detail in the report. The end result of all of this are 10 recommendations to the Council, which are in the appendices, which will hopefully be looked at the annual meeting or as soon as possible thereafter, Chair. Just wanted to point out, I think it's quite important to clarify that none of these changes have come from members or or from any particular groups. These have arisen organically from usually from questions from other officers, or where officers have come to us and said this doesn't make any sense. Why does this happen like this? We've taken that away, and we thought, well, we'll try to fix that as part of this ongoing reviews. But what I'm trying to say is none of the driver behind these changes originates from any particular member group. I don't want to go through all the changes, Chair, because I think most of them are consequential or quite technical or pretty. I think most members are quite agnostic on them. But what I was going to do is look at Appendix 1 questions, 7 business cases, 8 registered officer decisions, 9 code of conduct, and 10 political group consultations. I was going to say a little bit about it and then stop, see if you have any questions. If you have any questions about, obviously, other than those appendices, then at the end probably would work. What you will see in the report is that we've asked for recommendation for it to be noted and then the report to be submitted to full council. What we're asking is that to be changed slightly. We have had a group response yesterday, or was it the day before? Yesterday or the day before, which we haven't had a chance to look through it in detail. So what I was asking is that we can have a delegation that we can make minor changes in consultation with the chair from what you see in front of you. So if we move to Appendix 1, so this is questions from the public and members. So the principle behind these changes are to reflect the same principles that was agreed for scrutiny committees by council a few months, about six months ago. The main changes are related to supplementary questions, and the main changes are that a supplementary question must be raised one clear day before the meeting. Currently, it's 90 minutes before the meeting, which, as you can imagine, when you're trying to prepare for a meeting, causes some problems. The second part is we have, as a result of comments from this committee, where reports are late, that the deadline for raising questions is extended for one day after that to reflect a late report. Where the public raise supplementary questions, we ask, similar to over scrutiny, that they are submitted in writing. The recommendation in front of you today doesn't have that same requirement for members. So members, you have your own code of conduct. You know what is required from you. So that still allows members to ask supplementary on the hoof, so to speak, or prepared verbal question, I should say. Finally, similar to over scrutiny, any questions raised and answered within the last 6 months won't be accepted. At the moment, some committees do have the same questions repeatedly, and we would be looking to if a question is raised, simply redirect the previous answer to the person asking the question. So on Appendix 1, any passing that over to the chair?
Yeah, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sean. It's me with my sort of programming brain thinking about all the different combinations of things that could happen. So, for example, same question from same person or same question from anybody?
Same question.
Right, so it applies to anybody, but including members. So a member of the public or a member of council trying to ask the same question that's already been placed 6 months previously.
Within the last 6 months.
Within
yes.
the last 6 months. The next thing is how do you enforce that? Is there going to be a reference library then? Because I've always had a problem referencing libraries of backdated questions. So it doesn't have to be a resource necessarily for councillors, but obviously someone's going to have to check, has that question been asked before? Otherwise, you can't enforce it. So is there some thought into how that's going to be done as part of the process?
We used to keep a record of all questions as they were answered. So the intention would be to keep that record. We we haven't put the thought into yet whether or not we should publish that. So we could just basically redirect the individual to the
That would be
question.
helpful, I think.
It kind of depends on what the question is. If it's most questions answered in that way shouldn't be personal to the individual, because that's one of the requirements of the questions. So we should be able to have a record, and we can just redirect the person. Similar that we do for FOI requests. So where we have FOI requests which are repeated, and we publish information on the website about the same questions, structures, salaries, that type of thing. Rather than answering it, we simply redirect the person to that website. So that's what we're looking to do.
Thank you, Sean. And just to follow up, is there any intention to use in order to look through previous questions? Because obviously it's not going to be an exact same question. You're not going to find an exact match, are you?
No.
Between the framing of the question. So how's that going to be done? Is they going to use an AI tool to try and find out if it's been asked before? And follow on with supplementary questions. They could be previously asked as well. So you could, in a canny way, if you were being political, you could sort of ask your first question, which was unique, but then your supplementary question could be a repeat, because for whatever gain that might make. So there's sort of problems. How do you actually do it if the wording's different? What's the actual? Are you going to be able to enforce it again?
Yeah, there are provisions within the Constitution that an officer makes a decision around that. In respect of the MO has that discretion to decide whether or not it has been raised. I can't put down every different capture in the Constitution, every different nuance of that, but I would imagine that the principle, if the substance is the same, that it wouldn't be answered. If there's a question, if there's an issue about part of the questions answered, well, we wouldn't answer that part. And part of the process we have with questions is that sometimes if it's not accepted, it will go back to the person asking the question. Do they want to change the question? So it would be accepted. So what we would probably do in the situation, saying, well, that part has gone. This is the reference for section 1, section 2. That will go forward.
Great. So just final thing then. So we will be still helping the public to ask questions. That should be the aim.
The intention is to provide the answer, but on the basis that we don't provide the answer repeatedly, as in the answer's been provided, and we would redirect them. Similar that we use in FOI, we would redirect them to the easiest routes to get that answer.
Frank.
Yes, so reference the supplementary questions, and you were going to the one way they had up to 90 minutes before a meeting. Would it not just be as simple just to say, if you leave it as late as 90 minutes, you're very unlikely to get an answer today, rather than dismiss questions that are coming in that late? And so therefore, somewhere in the wording earlier would suggest that you give an officer at least so long to ask a supplementary. Otherwise, we'll find it difficult to answer it on that day. And therefore, you're not sort of cutting it out, but you are giving advice.
I agree with that. I guess the issue we're trying to do is that if you're unable to provide that information, the responses will write to you within 10 working days. That's your answer. But what we're aiming to do is try to have a process in place that you will get your answer at that meeting, rather than we'll write to you in 10 days. So what we're saying is, if you want the answer at the meeting and you want to raise a supplementary, this is the process that follows that allows us to actually respond to that. And that's before you actually look at the content of the response and how much work goes into it and how informed it is. You avoid potentially rushed answers where someone may want to give an answer even though probably you haven't got sufficient time, or officers have not been available, so the right officers haven't been able to be consulted on that. So it's it's a mechanism to try and get a considered answer at that meeting, but there's always the existing method of, well, we'll answer you afterwards because we can't answer it in that time.
Frank, is that all right with you? That response. So we're saying that actually that if you submit your answer within a day before, you will get an answer at the meeting. And if you don't, but if you still ask the supplemental question after that, the council will provide a written answer at some time. But so in the interest of kind of democracy and openness, I think Frank's suggestion was an interesting one, because people can still ask a question whenever they, right up to the file deadline, but they must understand that asking that supplemental question, they will not get an answer at that time. So
That's the
it's
principle,
something
no.
which quite appeals to me. I don't know what other committee members think. So instead of saying, you've got to submit the answer of the question within 24 hours. If you don't, you won't get an answer. We're saying no. If you can still submit it, but you won't get an answer there and then. You'll get a written answer within 7 days to your supplemental question. Sean, is that? Have I confused you?
If it's answered, if it's raised within the day before. I guess that comes back to the point of, why are you asking a question of a committee when you can just write to the council and we'll give you an answer anyway? Isn't it? If the question is you want the answer, why do you want to ask it at that committee? Just write to the council. The council will respond. You will get your answer.
Well, the answer might be because you want to ask it in public, and you want that.
And this is the way to try and get an answer to you in time for that public meeting, because you've given enough time to the person being asked to consider the question, rather than just saying, no, 90 minutes, I could answer it, but you know, that's a bit rude, asking me a question 90 minutes, doorstepping me like that. You'll get an answer in 10 days. So this is trying to, this isn't a kind of, how do we stop up questions coming in? This is more about, how do we give proper answers to questions at those meetings?
And I appreciate that, and we don't want to be in a position where too many questions are deferred, and I think the exception is with councillors. If they can ask questions at the last minute. And I'm trying to understand it in my own mind now. What's the distinction? I think you're saying there is a distinction because the councillor is subject to the code of conduct, and I think we as councillors accept that if we ask a really difficult question, which requires facts, we'll have a written answer.
No,
but we kind of live with that. We have slightly different standards. So
correct,
I'm still a little bit unclear as to, so if someone submitted a question half a day before, would that then, are you saying that that question would then not be answered?
It wouldn't be answered at that meeting,
but it would be answered.
but it can be answered in
public.
writing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Robert.
Yeah, I like the proposal. They're not suggesting that. Sorry, I like the proposal because if you get a question asked at the last minute, you're unable to answer it straight away. It's a written answer. The committee don't even see it most of the time. We don't know what's been said unless it comes up again. I like the democracy from our point of view, that we would hear the explanation for that particular question. So I like the way the proposal is written now.
But as I understand it, Robert, the proposal as written now is that if you submit a question at the last minute, it gets rejected.
No, it doesn't get rejected. You won't get an answer till next committee meeting.
Yeah, you won't get it answered.
And then
at
it
that
can be
meeting.
publicly answered at the next committee meeting.
Okay, good, fine.
Well, it'll be answered in writing between the meetings.
Yeah,
That's what the proposal is.
And if that's the case, then we need to make sure that the committee members are informed of the question and the answer.
Yeah, I think the answers are supposed to be written, sent with the minutes when the minutes are distributed. But there's also a 20-day period. I think we looked at this, talked about this yesterday.
10 days to respond after the meeting, and then that will be included within the next minute. So there's no kind of public answer, so to speak. It's there in the minutes, but it's not a you won't sit down and read the question again a month later.
Any more questions? Mark, yeah.
So, as you've seen, we needed some clarification on it. Do you think it's, or have you put in the appendix somewhere an explanation of why this is being done, so it doesn't sound like we are trying to stifle public participation? So there's two things here. One is the time, the deadline, if you like, for submitting an answer, and the second one is why you can't answer ask the same questions again and again. And it might be that some people want to understand, why do we say that, especially if that 6 months elapses, goes over an election period, and you've got new people sitting on the committees, or there's been a change of committee structure. It might be somebody wants to ask the same question again. We might need to provide some rationale behind it.
The intention wasn't to add guidance into the Constitution, but sitting behind the Constitution for a lot of things is the guidance which are on our website and in our documentation about how things are done, that type of thing. So what I'll do is take away that point about, we would have done it anyway, but I'll just make it clearer that the online guidance and the online everything will need to be updated in the guidance as a result of the changes. But I'll make that clearer in the report.
Okay. So, Mark, you've raised the question of a record being kept of questions, which hopefully will be accessible to members of the public and councillors. And I think there was a time when that existed in the past. We just need to bring that back, please. The other question, which I think is might be worth airing, is that I think councillors sometimes feel their questions, and members of the public feel their questions have not been answered. So they kind of repeat the question because they don't feel they've had a proper answer the first time. So that's an issue of democracy where people are saying, look, it's a very clever answer, but it didn't answer my question. And are we saying that the question having been asked but not answered, you can't ask that same question for 6 months? I just want to air it as, I think that's a public concern, is that questions are not being properly answered. And what sort of for some people it's an answer. You only have to look at the Prime Minister's question time or something like that, and they're very clever. They don't answer the question. We don't really want to be like that. We want to be a little bit more open.
I think that will come into this discretion point that the MO has in relation to that question. We're looking at it to see whether or not it has actually been answered or not. But at the same time, by the person who's answering the question, you might not like my answer, but that is my answer. That's politics, isn't it? So I think for the MO there'll be a look at what the question is, what the answer is. You can't completely ignore the question and answer something else. But at the end of the day, it might not be a substantive answer or the answer you like, but sometimes it's the answer you're going to get.
Okay. How do the rest of the members of the committee feel about that? Anybody got a particular view, Robert?
I think you made a very good point there. We where the discretion is, we would have to. I mean, I think it's up to the officers to look at this and say, well, actually, I don't think it was properly answered either, so we'll let this go through, because it happens. I've heard my own party, I've heard other people, I've heard council officers cleverly, slightly dodging the issue in answering questions. It's happened. So I think if people want to repeat it, I can see your concern there.
Anybody else want to chip in? Yeah, Dave.
Thank you, Chair. I was just thinking myself that sometimes the same question could be repeated, but circumstances have changed for the answer to be different. When things change within the environment that the question is asked. So consequently, the same question could get a different answer when circumstances change due to companies going bust or whatever. So consequently, I think there's a question about, if the same question is being asked, but there's a potential different outcome, then it should be allowed. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point.
And it comes back to this 6-month point, and also it's the answer, isn't it? Is the answer going to be the same? There's the answer for you. We'll direct you to that point. If it changes, then the answer is going to be different. So you would have to give a different answer to that question.
Kerry.
In difficult times and challenging situations, I'm not sure that it is either transparent or democratic not to allow forensic questioning by the public. I think that is. Sometimes you ask a question, you get an answer, but you need to ask a deeper question. And I think saying you can't have a similar question or a repeat in a 6 months doesn't sound right to me when they are difficult situations that need proper challenging.
Sean, that's a difficult question to answer, isn't it?
I think it would, again, it will come down to the MO's discretion in relation to what the answer is, and having that third-party analysis of, as you're saying, are you actually answering a question, or are you sidestepping it, or are you trying to give a cute answer which doesn't answer the question? But yeah, I think it'll come down to the circumstance of the individual question and what the answer is on that.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. And following on from what Kerry said there, the process then is going to be that somebody submits a question, the MO will vet it. And even if it has been asked before and the MO decides it has been asked before, they will still get a reply, and the reply will be, here's the answer from the previous time it was asked. So in a way, we're not denying anything. We're not blocking we're not saying your question is invalid and when you're not going to get a response, because it's either valid and they'll get a new response, or it was at one point valid and here's the answer. So they always get a response. We're not blocking public interactions.
I think Mark, the paragraph says here, a question will not be accepted if the same or similar question has been raised to council, etc. So it will not be accepted. So this wording says, no, you will not get a reply at all. So maybe that's something which, Sean, you and I have a look at.
I can change that one word.
Yeah.
Kind of say that it'll be redirected to where the answer is.
Yeah.
If it's been done previously. So I'll need to find that paragraph and change that word.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
And Carrie, thank you for your intervention. It's really appreciated. Yeah, Robert.
And a quick one to satisfy David and Kerry's point, which is very valid. If somebody doesn't think the answer was answered properly, or they think that circumstances have changed, then they should rephrase the question. They should say, I asked this before, but things have changed, or this is why I'm not satisfied because you didn't explain this point. And then the monitoring officer's got something a bit different. It's not word for word the same question. They've rephrased it or recouched it in terms of the change of events, or explained why they don't think they get an answer, and then it can be asked again.
Agreed, because the answer would be different, I guess. So, yeah, completely agree.
Okay. Shall we move on to the next session? Yes. The next section you wanted to talk about. Yeah.
So the second part was about business cases and the fact that the Constitution doesn't really make much reference to a particular process or procedure around how it's adopted. All I've done there is tried to draft something which captures what I've been explained to me has been customer practice, the norm, but at the same time ensuring that it captures the same controls I've seen in other organisations, but doesn't turn this into copying out the Green Book again into the Constitution. So just to reflect, in simple terms, once to put something into the budget requires an outline business case, and we have a standard form template that's pretty straightforward. The decision to spend, so that is a decision that goes to full council. The decision that's to spend that money then requires a full business case, which depending on the nature of the decision and the detail and the impact, would require further information on things like environmental impact, that type of things. But what we're not doing is saying you must have this in every case. This must be it has to be it has to be sufficient that the decision maker can make a proper considered decision on based upon the information that's provided.
Right. Any comments on that? The suggested or the comments from the group leader who emailed us. I haven't looked to see if they cover this, but they may well do, Sean. But we'll deal with that outside the meeting. Yeah.
I haven't considered because they were only received 2 days ago, Chair. I haven't looked at them in
No.
detail.
That's fine, Sean. Mark.
Thank you, Chair. On Appendix 7, is this it? No? Sorry.
No, we have not.
Getting the wrong one. I'll come back to
No,
that one.
yeah, appendix. This is appendix 7. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah.
We're
Finance
discussing
procedure rules.
Appendix 7, yeah?
Capital schemes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think so, Sean. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, it is. So Appendix 746, item 46, says there that full business case capital schemes are considered to be ongoing, repeat, or business as usual. Ongoing. So does that mean that, and you're going to know immediately what I'm talking about, does that mean if a full business case was approved for phase 1 that you don't need one for phase 2?
No.
That's page 50, page 54 of the public pack, I think.
I'm on page 30 in ModGov, and it's on. So it's I'm on, yeah.
Mark's looking at the introductory report rather than the appendix. Yeah.
So 33.4.6 talks about repeat capital schemes. So it talks about estate, school, property, repeat capital schemes such as estates, school, property maintenance, IT refresh, that type of thing. So it's the same. It's the same case each time. So at that point, what we're saying that we wouldn't need a full business case for that, because simply it's spent, replacing the existing IT, replacing highway upgrades, that type of thing. So that's the kind of, that's what I mean by the ongoing.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on Appendix 7? No, next one, Sean.
Okay, Appendix 8, record of operational decisions. So at the moment, officers have to record any decision that spends over £50,000. That was set in 2014. The recommendation is to increase that to £75,000. 2 reasons. If it was just simply increased by CPI, it would be at 70,000 at this point. So in the 12 years, the more records being captured, but also the £75,000 mark aligns with the contract procedure rules for contracts that are between the medium and high value. So it's the point that in the contract procedure rules we consider to be a higher value and requiring recording. So that's the recommendation.
Yeah, any questions on that? No, I see none. Can we move on, Sean?
Okay, Appendix 9, Code of Conduct. We've seen this a few times. So this is just the recommendation to full council to allow us to offer a local resolution procedure to local council, parish and town councils, should they wish to accept it. So we have spoke about that. What we're not doing is stipulating exactly how it's done, and we're not saying they must have it either. We would like them to have it, but
Yeah, we'd like them to do it in order to reduce the burden on the resource of the council. But if we can't force them to do it, so that seems to me fair enough. Robert, are you okay with that? Because I know that's
Yes,
the
and
thing
I'd
you're
like to
keen on.
congratulate Sean on navigating what I think is a very practical solution. I was over ambitious in my original recommendations on this, and I think this is a suitable way of making it work.
Great, Mark. Did you want to? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Sean, so looking at the documents again, it's numbered 65 in that appendix. So that would be on page 32. It says feedback from PTCs on this proposal has been mixed. So parish town councils, they have the option to take it on, right? They've got the option. And the majority of responses said, they just believe the current process will continue. But if the idea is to encourage parish town councils to wash their own laundry, as it were, when it comes to code of conduct issues between councillors, then could we look into something like, asking for them to pay if they want the county council and the MO to do a full investigation on an issue, on an in-house issue like that, then if they've got their own policy in place, they wouldn't have to pay because they do it themselves. But if they're asking us to do it, or if they're asking county council to do it, there would be a charge, because as it's explained earlier on, a full investigation is many hours of work.
Yes, the purpose of this is to try and get better outcomes for the council, better outcomes from the complainant and the subject member. I very much would like them to pay for those costs, or a case of washing your own laundry. This problem has been created. That council would pay for that. There's no way that we could insist on that happening. They would have to volunteer it. But what I was going to say on this is only the first stage. This is just to get through council the mechanism that yes, that this is an acceptable way forward. How we roll this out and what we do to try and encourage these councils to take it up, because it has been negative and it has been pushed as being negative by other parties, which is a case of, well, just leave it to the monitoring officer. They're the ones that are statutory empowered to do it. Why bother? Let them do it. Let them do it. But so this is only the first step to actually get the mechanism. After that is how do we encourage these local councils to want to try and take this up? There has been a couple who have come back forward and said, well, we'll do this anyway. And I suspect there are a lot of councils there that just probably looked at it and thought, we do all this. We sort these problems out. As I've said previously, there's over 100 councils every year that we don't hear anything from. And I suspect they're the ones that are probably doing this without any sort of regard in any event. So, so with regards to the payment, yes, that would be great, but I suspect there'll probably be some resistance around that. But it's a nice idea. This by October time, hopefully we'll start to hear from central government what the outcome of the reviews are. And by that time, we'll start to realise what else is being put forward. We know that certainly with regards to local councils, they are pushing these resolution protocols, mainly because the amount of money that goes involved and the amount of issues compared to what the actual issue really is. So this local resolution protocol won't go away even under a new regime.
Mark, are you comfortable leaving it at that? For the
Yes,
moment?
thank you. So I was just thinking, if a local parish council, town council adopts its own local code of conduct process monitoring, as it were, then they wouldn't get charged. They wouldn't be a charge because they've done it. They're doing it themselves. But if they don't, they're using someone else's resources to sort their stuff out. But yeah, you're right. That can be sorted later. Thank you.
Right. Anything else on that? Oh, Robert.
Just a quick one. There were a few councillors who didn't like these original proposals, but I'm sure they didn't know how complex and expensive is the standards panel operation. It's not just an investigation by the monitoring officer. It's a very in-depth investigation followed by what amounts to a full court hearing with lots of people involved. It's an expensive and lengthy process. And sometimes, at least one of the cases I've dealt with, it was trivial and should never have got to that level, and could have been settled quite easily by an informal process. So let's hope we can encourage councils to use that, particularly in trivial cases, which some of them are, so that we don't have to go through all of that.
Great, thank you. So, Sean.
So, Chair, the final one, Appendix 10, political group consultations, which I understand has been a concept for quite some time, but has never been written down until quite recently. And my view on this is that I can ask 54 councillors to explain it to me, and I'd probably get 54 different answers. So this is an attempt to try and have some form of agreement exactly what that means, what a consultation is, and because as we've seen in the last couple of days, Chair, yeah, no two councillor gives the same answer around what it is. So we're trying to codify it so we can say that this is what is actually intended.
Okay, any comments on?
I do
Appendix
appreciate
10?
it. I think it does need some work with what we've got to at this point.
Yeah, okay. And any immediate comments, Appendix 10? No. Okay. So you and I'll take away this section, particularly to have a look at.
Chair, so the recommendation is, yes, if you can approve that this goes forward to council, but on the basis that there will be some further changes to be done by myself or by the MO in consultation with the chair of the committee.
Okay. So that's the kind of proposition. Do you know what you're voting on? But okay, so all those in favour? We have a pass, Sean. Well done. Item 8. This is statutory accounts, progress accounting policies. Stacey, is it you on this one? Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
afraid
Chair.
I didn't introduce two people we have from Grant Thornton. Good morning, Stacey.
Thank you. Okay, so in this report, I'm bringing to you an update on our progress to prepare and finalise the statutory accounts for 2025-26. The team are currently busy preparing for the year end in anticipation for the 31st of March next week, following which the work begins to finalise the outturn position and the subsequent draft statement of accounts, which will be presented to the Audit and Governance Committee on the 9th of June. As part of best practice, and to demonstrate good governance, we present to you a report on the accounting policies and the estimates, which sets out the judgments that we make in preparing our financial statements. So included at Appendix 1 to the report is our accounting policies, which are incorporated within our statutory accounts against each note that those policies relate to. And this is in line with the format that we presented last year's accounts in. There is one change to the accounting policies this year for you to note, and this relates to the implementation of the code amendments to the valuation of property, plant and equipment, or PPE, as you might hear it referred to. Revaluation requirements have been changed to once every 5 years on a rolling programme with indexation applied in the intervening years. So Appendix 2 of the report just sets out the accounting estimates and the judgments that we make in preparation of those statements, which you will see does include that note about the change to the PPE and the valuation. All of those estimates and judgments are subject to robust audit procedures by our auditors, Grant Thornton. So just that assurance there for you. The statutory deadlines for local authorities to publish their unaudited 25-26 accounts is the 30th of June 2026, and the 31st of January 2027 for the publication of final audited accounts. So the team is making really good progress with the initial audit work that we are undertaking. We're on track, and we are achieving all of our internal planning deadlines at the moment, so we are on target. We are working to the internal deadline of the 31st of May to have finalised and published the draft statement of accounts onto the council's website, and we plan to bring the final accounts and the audit opinion for approval at the 29th of September, I believe, Audit and Governance Committee, which is in line with previous years. So that's all good. Thank you.
Stacey, thank you. Any questions? I think that's all pretty good. Grace, did you want to comment at all on this paper? I know you're not down for it, but okay, fine, thank you. So do we need a vote on this one? Yes, we do. So the committee notes and deems the arrangements for the preparation of the 25-26 statutory accounts as satisfactory and approves the accounting policies which inform the preparation of those accounts. Have a show of hands, please. All those in favour, thank you very much. Item 9, External Auditors Draft Annual Plan. Does this start with you, Stacey? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just introduce the report and then I'll hand over to Grace to go through the details. But yes, we have the draft external audit plan for 25-26, which sets out the plan for auditing the financial statements for the year ending the 31st of March 2026, which is included at Appendix A to the report. The report sets out all of the risks within the sector, our progress against previous audit recommendations, value for money arrangements, along with details around the levels of materiality and items that will be tested more thoroughly. And on that note, I'll hand over to Grace. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so as Stacey's introduced, this is our audit plan for the financial year 25-26. So it is quite consistent with what you would have seen in prior years. The significant risks that we have are consistent with what we've had in prior years and across the sector. The key thing to mention is probably materiality. So you would have seen that has increased this year. This is due to a change in the major local authority threshold. So you may remember back 2 years ago, you became a major local audit because you'd surpassed the 500 million threshold for expenditure. The NAO has now revised that and it's now 875 million. So you've dropped back down below that. So that means that we can have slightly higher materiality, and it changes our approach to some of the areas such as PPE valuations and our internal reviews as well. So it should be reduce the burden that way. In terms of timelines, as Stacey's mentioned, we're hoping to start the audit early in June, similar to what we did last year, and then conclude before the end of September for that 29th of September audit committee. Our planning work is going well so far, and as in prior years, we're trying to move forward as much early testing as we can to try and ease the burden when we get to year end. But I should also, introduce Oscar. So Oscar's taken over as audit manager for this year from Kathy. So I'll hand over to Oscar to introduce himself and also to cover the significant risk areas.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. So hello everyone. By way of introduction, I'm the audit manager for 25-26. So I'm taking over from Kathy, who was the audit manager in the prior year. So my role primarily is being the main point of contact between the audit team and the finance team. I review all the work that the audit team will produce to ensure quality standards are met. And I also produce the reports such as the audit plan being presented today. The audit plan is our first deliverable for the audit, and you'll see that the plan for 25-26 is similar to what you've seen in the prior years, with no significant changes in scope in terms of the significant risk areas. If you could turn to PDF page 94 of your packs, which is page 6 of our report, I'll just go through the significant risks briefly. So just for context, a significant risk is an area which we deem requires special audit attention due to factors that increase the likelihood of a misstatement happening. So the first one is management override of controls. This is a mandated significant risk in line with ISA 240. Our testing in this area primarily involves testing journal entries. So we'll review a selection of journal entries to ensure they're valid business transactions and they have adequate supporting documentation behind them. We'll also review significant estimates to ensure they're reasonable at year end. Moving on to the next page 7 of our report, or PDF page 95 of your pack, it's the valuation of land and buildings. So given that the valuations are subject to a number of assumptions in which small changes can cause material movements in the value, as well as complexity of the valuations themselves, we've deemed this a significant risk area. So our testing will involve selecting a sample of assets to ensure the assumptions are robust and the values are correctly stated. And as touched on previously, you have the indexation this year, so we'll also review indexed assets to ensure appropriate indices have been used. Investment properties is the next significant risk area, so that's on PDF page 96. That one, the rationale is exactly the same as for land and buildings, in the sense that the valuations are complex and involve assumptions in which small movements can cause material movements in the valuations. So again, to test that one, it will involve testing a sample of assets that we'll select. On the same page, we detail the last significant risk area, which is the actuarial valuation of pension assets and liabilities. So the valuations in this case also depends on assumptions, and small movements can cause big differences in the balance. Given the inherent complexities, again, we've classed this as a significant risk. So again, our testing will involve verifying the assumptions and methods used by the actuary and ensuring the actuary is appropriately competent to perform the work. And I will now pass over to Grace to go through the VFM.
Thanks, Oscar. Yes, you'll see on page 19 of our report the value for money risks. So currently we've identified 2 risks of significant weakness, and these are within the financial sustainability area, and they mirror what you would have seen in our final report for last year. So in relation to the growing DSG deficit, we do note that the government has confirmed now that they will be funding 90% of the deficits through a grant, but obviously the action plan and the actions the council are taking to rectify this going forward is still an area of focus for us. And then the second risk of significant weakness is around the medium-term financial plan, and looking at the assumptions behind that and the plans to bridge the savings gaps over the length of the medium-term financial plan. So they'll be our focus areas. There were no risks identified within governance or the 3 E's at this point, and we'll keep you updated if anything else is identified. That's all we were planning to go through, but happy to take any questions on the detail if there are any.
Mark, yeah.
Thank you for your report. The paying off 95% of the deficit. Now that's interesting. Is that up to the deficit accrued up to a certain date? Is it up to the end of 26 or end of 27? Is it in? I think there was a year put in there, wasn't there?
Thank you, and really good question. And we provided a brief update in the budget papers that went to council as the announcement had just been made. The plan by central government currently is that 90% of the cumulative deficit up to the 31st of March 2026, so next week, will be funded, and that will be through the High Needs Stability Grant, and that will be paid to each council in the autumn. That's as much detail as we have at the moment. But in order to demonstrate and evidence eligibility of spend and that accumulated deficit, we will need to submit a plan, and that will need to be approved. And we're working with across finance and education colleagues with DFE to prepare that plan, currently with a deadline of the middle of June.
Any other questions, Robert?
Admit my ignorance. Could somebody give me a very brief definition of materiality? It's nobody else was brave enough to ask, were you?
So it's basically a threshold that we audit to. So there's different levels of materiality. So you'll have headline materiality, which is based on a percentage of your gross expenditure, and that's based on the risks within the sector and looking at the risks within the council. We then have performance materiality, which is a percentage of that headline materiality, and that's what we test to, because then it gives us basically a buffer to aggregate any errors if there are any. So that's 75% for this council, which is the highest that we go, and that's based on past prior year adjustments and past performance and any risks within the council. And then we have triviality, which is 5% of that headline materiality, and all errors that are above that amount are reported to you as those charged with governance in our report. Anything below that we don't take any action against. Hopefully that's helpful.
Rachel.
Yeah, and just to kind of simplify that a stage, because that is absolutely correct, and it's the technical response. But I think what you're looking for is more of a layman's response. So I will do my very best. So we have a balance sheet, say, with property, plant and equipment within our assets at the top of the balance sheet of, say, £500 million. So the audit team will test different audit assertions within that balance. So they'll test valuation, they'll test accuracy, they'll test classification to make sure that the accounts that are presented are true and fair. That's what audit are seeking to provide assurance to you as audit and governance committee members on. Now within that there may be some errors. We hope not. We're an award-winning finance team, so our aim is that they are a correct set of accounts, not just true and fair. But materiality exists to serve the public and the user of the accounts to consider what error would be tolerable almost that wouldn't take away from your understanding of the overall principles of the accounts. So within that, a £10 million error, say, on those assets wouldn't make a material difference to your understanding of the council's financial position and performance. So another way to look at it is that we're allowed to make a mistake of £10 million, up to £10 million before it's deemed significant for reporting. But you've got that tapering of the different thresholds, and what audit will do to make sure that we're not making 100 mistakes of £1 million each, they will add all of those up together and they will report those to you in the audit findings report that comes in September, so that you have sight of the, I think we call them non-adjusting items, and those material adjustments that we've agreed to make in that final set of accounts.
Yeah, I got that. Thank you.
And yes, Aubrey.
Thank you, Chair. What concerns me is that the council's now got 4 separate companies. We've taken over the shopping centre, Maylord Orchards. Are accounts for this going to be coming to this committee? How are they dealt with, as it could have a major effect on the council itself? Is that part of the general audit that Grant thought?
I'll deal with that, Rachel.
Yeah, absolutely. So the council has 2 shareholdings in 2 companies. We have an 80% shareholding in Hoople, we're the majority shareholder, and we have a 100% shareholding in Cyberquarter Limited. So we account for Hoople Limited as a group company in our group accounts. So at the back of the financial statements, we include a separate mini set of accounts, group accounts that include a income and expenditure account, balance sheet, etc., so that you can see the results of those companies and the council sharing those companies reflected in that statement. With regard to Maylord Orchards, that is an asset that we own, and income and expenditure are reported through the council's normal budget mechanism and financial reporting. So the trading results of that particular investment are reported through the accounts that you see and approve, and through our normal routine monthly budget monitoring.
So the full income and expenditure relating to that will be within the accounts?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
And the valuation of the property is done every 5 years, or maybe it's a bit more material because it's Maylord's Orchards. And then there's a bundle of properties, isn't there? And they're not individually identified in the accounts. There's a general pot of valuations about, I guess it's an investment property, Maylord's Orchard, or... Yeah.
So we don't have a general pot of any properties. We account for them individually through the asset register, and we have different classifications of those properties within the property, plant and equipment notes. We have land and building assets, which are generally our operational assets. Investment assets, if I'm correct, are ones which we hold for economic regeneration purposes. Yep, it's been a while. And so we would revalue the land and building assets in line with our rolling programme, and that is the area that is subject to significant testing as a significant risk by external audit. And similarly, any investment assets require revaluation annually, and so that will be carried out by our external valuers as well, and subject to audit testing.
Grace, did you want to add anything to that? Yeah. Can I just ask about pensions? Seems to be something in the local government press at the moment. about contributions going to zero. Obviously, a bit of a concern with my background in pensions and that kind of thing that such an approach is being taken. You rely very much upon the actuaries and the auditors of the pension fund to look at all that. What's sort of latest on pension funds and deficits and all that kind of stuff? If there is a general view, Grace, I don't know what the industry is thinking at the moment.
Yes, there's no specific risks that are coming through on our side that would change our approach. It's already a significant risk given the estimates. So in terms of the work that we do, we look at areas such as contributions and the amounts paid over by the council individually, and then we rely on the work of the pension fund auditor for the assets and the liabilities and the underlying member data, just not to duplicate that work for each council. So that won't change, and we'll be relying on the Worcester Pension Fund to provide that for us. But we do look at the individual expenditure outgoings that the council make into that fund for each year. That is one of the tests that we do.
Thank you. No more questions, I don't think. So could I have a show of hands? The committee approves the proposed external audit annual plan for 25-26. Show of hands, please. Thank you very much. All in favour? Good. Now, item 10. I don't know who's going to introduce this. Stacey, are you going to introduce this? And swap. Okay. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. This is the usual update. It comes to your committee. This gives you an update of the work that the audit team have conducted since the last meeting of this committee. You've got 6 final reports in your pack tonight, of which 3 this afternoon, I should say, of which 3 are high substantial, or yes, they're all high substantial, which is really good, really pleased to see. We continue to follow up all of your agreed actions, and you may have noticed there are 19, I think, that say they're 90 days overdue. They relate to 2 historic audits, of which we are going to do, we're planning to put those audits into 26-27 plan, so we'll pick up all of those agreed actions then. I don't propose to add anything else to my update, Chair, so happy to take any questions.
Okay. So Lucy, there are a few concerns about the Transport Hub final report. It doesn't make particularly good reading. Rachel, do you want to give us a little bit of a background explanation which might help us to move forward? Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Happy to, Chair. I think it would be usual practice for the relevant SRO in this case to come and share and discuss this report with you. Unfortunately, that can't take place today because the officer isn't able to attend. We've had some discussions with SWAP on the outcome of this report, and separately we had instructed an independent expert industry-led firm to carry out a review of this project as one of our significant capital projects in the year. From our perspective, I think the findings of this report currently are not consistent with some of the findings of that separate report. And so our plan with SWAP is to carry out some more detailed work to understand where those differences occur. The progress of the Transport Hub project is reported to Cabinet tomorrow through the Q3 performance update, and that highlights this project with a green rating. So that project is currently on track for delivery and has hit the milestones required through the delivery plan for 25-26. So I think we can commit to a more detailed briefing in the future once we have done some further work to understand the differences between the SWAP findings and the externally commissioned report with the industry experts.
Okay, so I mean, it's actually quite a difficult position for us as a committee to be in. We have this report. It's showing high risk, and we rely upon the internal auditors who are not employees of the council, so less of a conflict of interest. And they've come up with this report which raises some issues. I think what you're saying is that you question those conclusions, and based on the evidence that you got from elsewhere, and you want to spend some time with SWAP just to go through to come up with a conclusion. I think as a committee we're very concerned when we receive this kind of report, and it's just unfortunate. I've used that word conservatively, that there hasn't been a prior warning. I think there's some uncertainty whether this report should really have come to this committee at all at this stage. We'd like to kind of avoid that sort of thing in future. I don't know whether you want to comment on that, Rachel, at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some learning from our side is that we need to ensure that this has gone through the appropriate QA, quality assurance process on our side, with that oversight by the corporate leadership team, before these reports are published in the public domain and presented to you as Audit and Governance Committee to take a view on. But I think it's absolutely appropriate now that we carry out that further review and understand why there are two differing opinions on the controls that are in place over this project.
Carrie, I wonder whether I could ask you to comment. It's very important for us as having someone independent on the council who can who has probably more experience than the rest of us put together on internal audit. Thank you.
I'm sure, Rachel, that you will be looking very carefully about the scope of both the audits, SWAP and the independent. And if there's no overlap between the two audits, they've looked at completely different things. That is one answer. But where they have looked at the same things and come up with very different conclusions, I'm sure you'll be investigating it very clearly, because they're not even close. They're at two different positions, and I know the Transport Hub has some emotional implications within the county. A lot of people have views about it, and to have such a report of high risk with the comments in here is very concerning. But then we've got another independent one that's saying it's green and everything's fine. I think we do need some clarification.
Yeah, absolutely happy to take that away. I think you're right, alongside a review of the scope to understand which areas were covered. Also, consideration of the evidence reviewed within that scope, because it might just be that there were some omissions, and that the that we all of the relevant information has not been considered. But from a internal monitoring perspective, the Q3 performance report, which is in the public domain and will be discussed at Cabinet tomorrow, our internal monitoring of the progress of this project identifies it as green, and we are not internally concerned about any issues with this project currently.
And of course, the independent audit has been done by industry experts with qualifications and skills in this area. So we probably need to look at the scope of SWAP's team who've been looking at this to see if they have matching skills and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. The industry experts who've carried out this and a number of other reviews are quantity surveyors and individuals used to delivering significant capital projects. The scope of their work is comprehensive. They reviewed over 180 different pieces of information to inform their assessment of the controls in place over it, and that was their remit. But again, I think it's appropriate now to review that and to take on those discussions with SWAP and to report that back to committee.
So, Rachel, what sort of time scale would you suggest? I'm just looking at Jen. I don't know when the next meeting is, but it's after the AGM. It's June, so I think we need something before then, please. Now, I was actually thinking perhaps before the council AGM.
Yep, happy to commit to that. Absolutely.
So in sort of 4 weeks' time.
Yep, we can do that.
And if necessary, we either have we'll decide how that meeting should take place.
Yep, happy to work with you all on how that information is shared and then discussed in a separate briefing.
And does that have an impact also on the council rates, council tax final report as well, where there are a number of concerns as well?
I mean, the council tax report, again, we've had some discussions to and fro with SWAP on this. In terms of the limited assurance, it is not my judgment that there are significant risks in this area, and the assurance that I can provide to you is around the collection rate. We have a 98% collection rate. That's a key performance indicator in our council tax collection that we monitor. That's been consistently high and is one of the highest in the country, and we continue to monitor that. Council tax income is accounted for in the collection fund, which is separately audited by external audit, and we have over a number of years now reported a surplus through the collection fund that has supported the revenue budget. So I think there are some areas that we can strengthen, and there are some planned improvements with some additional resources allocated to the Revs and Bens team for the next financial year, with a focus on reviewing single person discounts and exemptions to ensure that we are only awarding those to eligible residents. So that work will naturally take place next year. That's cyclical work. It last took place around 5 years ago. And it's important that that takes place on that cyclical basis, because its impact, it will have a significant impact, and then the results of that review will plateau, because we will uncover some instances where we need to do further investigation and gather evidence on those exemptions and discounts. But it's not appropriate to carry out that work every year. That work is planned now for 26-27, alongside strengthening of the arrangements around bank reconciliations. That's an area we can strengthen. But I don't think, given the collection rates, our bad debt write-offs in this area, and the other controls that are in place, I'm not sure that this warrants a limited assurance in this area.
Okay. Aubrey.
Yes, thank you for that. But in concerned about the council tax collections, apparently there's a total of £873,590 of credits being held on the council tax accounts, with some of these credits dating back to 1993-94. What action's being taken to clear this sort of backlog?
So we robustly and proactively pursue all of those accounts to ensure that we can return funds where they are due to residents. In many of these instances, we are experiencing difficulties in locating residents, in locating the right bank accounts where people have moved on. So we are actively ensuring that we do not move any of that money from those residents' accounts until we have confirmed the final position. So it's part of our ongoing work, and each year we continue to manage and resolve some of those issues, and that's fairly standard across most councils. We carry that those credit accounts, and we work to resolve. The total council tax that we bill for the council alone is £153 million per year. So for context, that amount accumulated over the last 20-30 years is not a significant amount in terms of our overall collection, and that's before we add in the amount that we collect on behalf of the parishes and police and fire precepts as well. So for context, this is a small portion of the total council tax that we collect, but we are actively managing it and seeking to resolve and return to residents where it is due.
Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to understand, Rachel, the thought processes behind bringing in a team of experts to review a project, and then also having our internal auditors, SWAP, reviewing the project. So is that normal when it comes to the major projects, or is it because these are the RO4 high risk projects that you do this, that you will be bringing in experts on other projects like the library, the museum, and other developments? That will this happen again, where there could be internal auditors looking at it, but also the council is going to bring in some experts to look at it as well?
Yeah, thank you. We regularly use experts across a number of different areas of the council. I think the lesson that we need to learn here is that the the results and the work that was ongoing by those industry experts was not shared with the internal auditors at the time that it was ongoing. So I think that is where we've arrived at now, that difference in terms of the overall assurance rating. So I think we need to ensure that where work is going on at the same time or even relevant to the audit plan for the year, that we share that in a more informed, timely way with internal audit.
Any more questions? Lucy, I don't know whether you want to make any observations. I think it's really important that there's a committee that we have an independent looking people coming from SWAP and looking over things and dealing with internal audit. So I think your work is very much valued and appreciated. I don't know whether you want to comment at all on the discussion which we've just had.
Sorry, I've got nothing to add, Chair, except to say we'll work closely with Rachel and get to the bottom of the council tax and the transport hub reviews and get that back to you.
Yeah, I think the hub is really important issue, bearing in mind some of the past history of the council. So any further comments from anybody? No. So this report is just for noting, so thank you for that. We then move on to the work programme. Jen, you've circulated items for the next meeting in June. Do you want to make any observations on? No. Okay. And hopefully we'll have another meeting, perhaps put it in the diary for 4 weeks' time, and report then. So that brings the meeting to a close. Next meeting, as I say, will be towards the end of April. Thank you for your attendance, and please can I ask the live stream is now stopped. Thank you.